The next problem, before we get to the next problem, we will deal with the operators that we haven't talked about, all right? These two operators. These two operators are actually integer integral division. That means division of integers, all right? Now, I would like you to imagine you're in your 3rd grade in a primary school. Imagine, pretend now you're little. You guys are very cute kids. And you are going to the 3rd grade in an elementary school, all right? 3rd grade. Do you know what I'm talking about? Grade 3. Okay? And I'm your teacher. And the teachers now say, what is the result of 23 divided by 4? And what are you going to give me? What are you going to tell me if I told you to do the math for 23 divided by 4? Are you going to give me the number of 5.75? Are you going to give me this number as a grade 3, as a 3rd grader? No. Why not? Because you haven't learned anything about a fraction yet. The decimal points and the fraction of that, all right? The only thing that you have learned to deal with are integers in the math lesson, in the math courses, right? So what are you going to give me when I ask you what is the answer of 23 divided by 4? What are you going to tell me? You might be telling me that the answer is 5 with the remainder of 3. Is that right? There's a remainder. What I'm trying to get the pens. All right. Like when you are in the 3rd grade, you have 23 divided by 4, and then you can easily have 5 and then 20. But there's a remainder of 3 right there. This is the remainder of 3. You don't know how to deal with this 3, so you just give it to your teacher. To tell her that I have the answer of 5, but I have 3 as the remainder, all right? And I don't know what to do with it. So you actually give your teacher 2 numbers. You actually give your teacher 2 numbers. 5 is the quotient. And 3 is the remainder. Do you know what I'm talking about? Any question? All right. So the next thing that we are going to use is, if you want to get the quotient of it, then you use double slashes. All right, double slashes will give you the quotient of 5. But if you are interested in the remainder, if you want to get the remainder of it, then you will use the percentage sign. And then that will get you, you will see the 3 as the remainder of that division. All right? Is there any question? So this is the 4. The missing 2 operators that we didn't talk about. Double slashes and also the percentage sign. All right? Any question? All right, if you don't have any, let's get back to the problem. The problem said, buying the pencils. A pencil costs $5. A dozen of them cost $50. Ming needs to buy every student in a class a pencil. How much would that cost? The question could have stopped here, but if the problem stopped here, this will be a harder one. This will be a harder one for you to answer. Why is it harder? Why is it harder? Because you have to deal with a situation like this. If there are 11 students in your class, how are you going to buy the pencils? And how much money will that cost? How? And how much? You guys are quiet. You need to answer my question. For me, I myself, I will buy a dozen, right? Because when you buy a dozen, you get 1 extra pencil and then $5 less. You get 1 extra pencil and that will cost $5 less. You save the money, you get an extra pencil. Is that right? That's basically what you would do, right? But if you do it that way, then this problem will be a little bit more difficult for you to solve. So I changed it a bit because Xiaoming is very ecological aware. So he is not going to buy anything that's unnecessary just to save money. So that means the number of the pencil that Ming buys is equal to the number of the students in the class. Do you know what I'm talking about? Even if you buy a dozen, will cost less, but he will still buy 11 pencils that cost $55. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Is there any question? But how do you solve this problem? How do you solve this problem? Let's do that. All right? Let's do it. All right, now we have a number of students, and then we use n, and which is, we'll take the input. We'll take the number from input, and then we'll print n. How many dozens do you need to buy if you have n students? How many dozens of pencils do you have to buy when you have n students? How do you calculate it? How many dozens of pencils do you need to buy when you have 42 students in class? You need to buy 3 dozens, right? How do you come up with that 3, the number 3? How do you calculate it? How? 42 divided by 12 using the integral division, right? Is that right? If you don't use the integral division, you'll get 3.5. There's no such a thing as 3.5 dozens. All right? So you need to use 42 divided by 12. And then you'll get 3 dozen. But there are 36 pencils in 3 dozens. That's not enough. That's not enough if you have 36 pencils, because we got 42 students. So how many more pencils do we need to buy for extra students? We need to buy 6 more, right? But how do you come up with that 6, the number 6? How do you come up with that? How do you calculate it? That's the same thing. We still have 42 divided by 12. But this time we use percentage sign. It will give you the remainder of that, all right? So we just have this thing, this 3 dozens times 50, because it costs 50 for a dozen, all right? And we times this 6 by $5 a piece. Then the total will be 180, all right? So that's what we will do. We will print. This is how many dozen you need to buy times $50 a dozen, plus n divided by 12. This is how many students extra, how many pencils extra you need to buy, in addition to 3 dozens of pencils, all right? For each one individually, you need to pay $5 for that, all right? Is there any question? For individual pencils, you need to pay $5 for each one of them. So this is actually the answer of it. However, if you run it, you will run into the same problem. The only difference is that this time it's not minus sign, it's the division sign. All right? It's not a minus, it's the division that caused the problem, and it's the same thing. You cannot divide a string by an integer. You cannot do that. It can only be done between integers, all right? Any question? So what do we do? What do we do? We convert the n into an integer. So is that it? No, you need to do it a second time here. We need to convert this n into an integer again. Okay? So we use that n twice. And then we need to convert it into an integer twice. What if we need to use it for like 10 times? Do we have to convert it into an integer for 10 times? Yes, you do. And that's waste of time. That's a waste of time. So is there an easier way of doing it? Yes, there is a easier way of doing it. Can we do this? Can we do this? We take the inputs, and then the results will be a string. And then we put the string inside that int function, and then convert that string into an integer and save it in n. And then this n will be an integer. Will that work? Yes, it will work. And then we don't need to do it anymore. Just one time will be enough. Like this. Do you understand this? This time, input is a string, and then we convert it into an integer, and then save it in n. So the n will be an integer in this case. Can an integer be divided by 12? Yes, you can. Can it be divided by 12 again and get the remainder? Yes, it can. So this is an easier way of doing it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay? If you do understand, there's another problem that you can work with. It's the next one, calculating the sum of 1 to n. I want the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 until plus n. What is the sum of that? What is the sum of this? Is there a formula that you can calculate the results? Yes, there is one. If you want to get the sum of integer 1 to n, then you can use this formula, which is n times n plus 1 divided by 2. This is the formula that you can get the sum of integer 1 to n. Do you know what I'm talking about? But remember, there's one thing that I want you to know. Okay? Like, if you have 111 divided by 2, what are you going to get? What are you going to get? You'll get 55, right? But for this kind of division, the regular division, even though the result is an integer, however, it will always give you in the form of a floating point with a dot 0 at the end. If you output a dot 0 at the end, are you going to pass the problem? No, you are not going to with that extra, because the problem wants you to output what? 55, not 55.0. The way of doing it is you need to use integral division. Then there will be no 0.0 at the end. Do you know what I'm talking about here? So for this problem, you might not want to use the regular division sign right here. You want to use the integral division sign like this. Any question? Any question? If not, there are 2 more 100 that you can get right now. Okay, aren't you excited?